Okay. I'd like to call Monday, November 17, 2024, Urban Renewal Agency meeting to order at 6 p.m. Tonight, all agents are here minus Marissa Jacobs. We've all had a chance to look at the agenda tonight, and so I'm looking for a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Agent Holmes makes a motion to approve tonight's urban renewal agenda. Any seconds?
Second.
Second by Council President, Agent President Miller. There is such a thing. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor state by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Any public comment tonight? Anything, Susan? Okay, we'll move on. Tonight's approval of the consent agenda is the July 15, 2024 Urban Renewal Agency meeting minutes. I'm looking for a motion to approve the meeting minutes when you have a chance.
Mr. Mayor, I move that council approve the meeting minutes as presented.
Agent Miller makes a motion to approve tonight's meeting minutes consent agenda. Any second? Second by Agent Santiago. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried unanimously. Brings us tonight, we are reviewing grant program policies. We have Associate Manager NJ Johnson here with the staff report.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Commissioners. So a little bit of context heading into this review. So back in July, you all approved the first couple, well, really 3 grant proposals for the new urban renewal policies and guidelines as you set them out. After doing this, I think everyone involved, so urban renewal, EDC, and staff all sort of realized some things that went well with the process and some things that we would like to improve now that we've kind of gone through it before. Some challenges came across. One consistent theme was really just that the type of applications and projects we got didn't necessarily fit the mold of what we were expecting, right? We were expecting a lot of facade improvements, touch up paint jobs in the downtown core, but what we ended up getting was a lot of, mechanical installations for fire pits and sidewalk projects that require a lot of engineering review. And so those projects are all fine, and they certainly help us with the goals of the urban renewal plan. But we can do a better job of having our program policies actually fit so that it's all sort of making sense and anticipating those types of projects. So we're going to go over a number of changes that staff is recommending tonight, but just going over the big ones at the beginning. So we talked last time about requiring 3 quotes to make sure that the city and developer are getting the best deal on the project. Allowing engineering and architectural consulting costs to be covered up to 50%, since this proved to be a barrier for some of the projects that we were seeing. Creating a process that grant recipients can request to amend the project scope or award amount. And then the last big one would be requiring a pre-proposal meeting with staff just to ensure that everyone is on the same page. So if we get through all of the changes tonight and you all are comfortable with it or have specific amendments, we would be looking for a vote of approval tonight. So getting into the program amendments, we'll start on page 6 of the packet. So really like 2 of the grant program packet. So the projects of primary preference. We included sidewalks since we approved a couple grants for sidewalks, and we had to sort of fit it in it's improving the accessibility, walkability, and aesthetics of the area. Certainly fits the goals, but it's just good to list that out here. Staff is recommending, this is something we talked about a lot, moving projects that remove barriers to access for people with disabilities from secondary preference to primary preference. There are a couple reasons for this. The big one that might not be super obvious is anytime you do like an alteration, the building code requires that you spend 25% of your budget on ADA improvements. And so with that requirement, having funding for those ADA accessibility improvements would allow more of these types of building alterations and facade improvements to take place if they could also support the accessibility component of it. Another one is for design work to be eligible for reimbursement. I think the original thought when we were discussing making it ineligible was, if someone is unsure whether or not the project's going to go through, the city, of course, wouldn't want to fund like feasibility study or a market study. But when we got into it, a lot of the permitting, especially if you're doing public improvements to city infrastructure, requires engineering that can be up to thousands of dollars. And one of the 3 grants, like if engineering isn't able to be reimbursed as part of the program, they would be out, and we would lose out on that sidewalk improvement. So one of the safeguards I included, not exactly here, but in the policy section, is let's see. So it's on page 8 of the packet, but it reads that grant requests that seek funding for design work will only be reimbursed upon the physical completion of the proposed improvements. This helps prevent the fear that was originally thought of, where we're not going to pay for engineering or architectural work and then get nothing physical or tangible out of it. So they would only be able to receive reimbursement after the completion of the project. And then a couple added clarifications throughout here, such as you're not eligible to receive a reimbursement if your property or you as a property owner in general somewhere else have an active violation with city code. And then also eliminating plan review and inspection fees for the city, because we just don't want to use urban renewal dollars to be paying the city back. It's just not as effective of a use of those monies. So with that, with the projects of primary preference, secondary preference, and ineligible project recommendations, I think would be a good time to pause for questions or comments.
Can I ask, have you seen any applications or anybody lately? Pre-applications or discuss?
We have one that it's one of the properties on the highway around the pet store, that kind of area. They were working through a violation with their parking lot, like an ADA violation. And we've worked with them saying, hey, you submitted, but here's more what we would need before it goes to EDC. But we have one we're working with right now.
I understand that this is being pretty new. It's going to be fluid.
Yeah.
We're going to be making changes as we get into it, and I think that's good. Trying to make it work to the best of our abilities. But I think these changes seem to make sense.
Okay.
You have a question? Has the requirement that there be 3 professional quotes submitted, has that been a barrier? That was a qualification for the last round of applicants, right? Did that seem to be a barrier, or?
We did not require that.
Okay.
And honestly, we kind of wish that it was baked into the program, but it's not a policy right now.
Okay. Do you anticipate that being a barrier at all, being able to obtain separate bids, or?
I don't think so. It's pretty common anytime you're working with the city or getting city dollars.
I think too, we match that kind of after our sidewalk program requires that. Although I will say, and just like when the city's required to get, multiple quotes, that if they tried to contact and can show proof that they made an attempt, that would count as one of them.
That's what I was going to ask. If they send out 3 to 5 requests and 4 of them come back as a no quote and one does, is there an exemption that shows I tried, here's what I got, here's showing proof that they no quoted?
Yeah.
Their flexibility.
The other reality too is that some of the smaller projects just aren't as worth it for a contractor. So that could be another thing where it'd be difficult to get that many quotes. But like Lori mentioned, if there's a clear effort, we would probably.
Okay, thank you.
Do we need to put some wording in there about that? If they don't get responses from the 3, what we consider No.
Lori, do you know if that language, like, that sits anywhere else right now?
We could look and see if we're doing that same kind of disclaimer with our sidewalk program, just so it's like the same basically as what we're doing there.
I'm just cautious that if somebody really reads this and
Could discourage.
yeah,
or-
they
Yeah.
might just cancel their application, but
Like, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was like, I'm looking for projects, like if, is paint, this, if you're repainting the whole building and doing some facade work and you're doing it yourself and you're
Mhm.
gonna be buying paint, you're gonna be buying some stuff. I mean, you have to have an engineer and a designer. Can you show those? And I went to Home Depot, Lowe's and Sherwin-Williams and got paint quotes.
Yeah.
Those are my 3 quotes and I went with this one. I mean, just trying to think of ways, especially if it is for aesthetics and they're cleaning up their sidewalks and doing some stuff.
Yeah.
Everybody's covered.
Yes, I see what you're getting at 100%. And if you all would be more comfortable with it, I think there's an opportunity here to use price ranges for projects as we have with other, where once you reach a certain threshold of your project cost, like it goes over a certain amount, then this 3 quote requirement would kick in. That could be
Or
an
if
option.
it's like, if it's something they're not doing themselves
Yeah.
or, because the intent here is more for like the larger projects. I mean, if somebody's painting their own building and they're not hiring a contractor to do it, then that would be different.
If you're redoing windows and changing a whole facade, you're gonna need engineering, some permits and stuff probably. I mean, you're not just gonna be able to just,
Yeah, I mean, if you're changing the headers and the windows and, you know, you actually have to get a structural permit for that, then yeah, they're probably gonna hire a contractor.
So does that mean that we also need to revise all goods and services rendered must be provided by a licensed contractor or retailer? Because what if they
Yeah.
are doing themselves?
Yeah, I think, I mean, well, I think the only thing we would need to add there is just like if required. Like there's certain work that you need to have a license for to do.
That's true.
You don't to paint.
We could just add that, and then we could have the discussion since it requires like a pre-meeting with planning staff to go over their project.
yeah, I'd leave it completely up to you to decide whether it would need, if it
Sure.
qualifies.
Any other comments on the different levels of projects before we get into policies?
Just a really quick.
Yeah,
clarifying
go ahead.
question. So projects under $5,000, there's no requirement for them to kind of match in any way. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe that's on the first page. I don't think it was in the edits, but I think it's on the first page. Yes.
But it says there's a match required for above 5,000, but I don't know if it's explicit that there's nothing, no matching required for under 5,000, is there?
I mean, I would look towards the section above where the minimum grant that you can request is $1,000. So anything between 1,000 and 4,999.
Get fully
Right.
reimbursed for.
That's too where also I was thinking on those smaller projects where you don't get 3 bids, maybe if it's under the $5,000 one or under $1,000.
Yeah.
It's not so much as
Mhm.
important, but
Mhm.
if you said if applicable or required,
Is that a comfortable threshold for all of you, 5,000?
minimum is 1,000, the max is 50,000. Right now, everything over 5,000 requires a 1-to-1 match.
I don't remember off the top of my head, what is our average so far with what we've awarded?
I mean, there was 5,500, 17,000, and 37,000.
Yeah, I was thinking 10, but I think in this case, 5. 5 makes sense.
So a $5,000 project or a $5,000 grant?
$5,000. $1,000 grant.
Okay.
What I would,
Yeah, since I guess since we're matching that 100%, it's assumed that it's, you know,
smaller, yeah.
So it's a $10,000 project, basically. We're gonna give them 5,000. But if the project's 8,000,
But we're only paying for part of that, so.
yeah, it's
that's
over
what
5,
matters
so
to
it'd be
us.
4,000, yeah.
We're saying waive the 3 bid requirement for projects for grants under $5,000.
Grant awards under 5,000.
Basically, if you don't need a match, you also don't need the 3 quotes. That sort of seems like an appropriate comp to me.
So could someone come with a $4,000 request? And they get the full amount without a match? But if it's $6,000 project, they're only gonna get $3,000 grant, because they only get a 50% match.
I think this is about the award amount, not the project cost.
So they could request 5,000 for an $8,000 total project.
Then is there a limit on the frequency with which someone could ask? So someone could come in each year for a $4,999 ask.
Yeah, we have there's a question on the application form on page 12 of the packet. Has your business received an urban renewal grant in the current fiscal year? And so I wouldn't necessarily recommend precluding that, particularly if the improvements are part of a series that the city is really interested in seeing take place. And knowing that they have to check yes or no honestly to this allows you all to judge in the context of what that is.
If I remember correctly, that was actually part of the discussion that we had, was that it could be something that was really important to the city. And so we didn't want to have like an auto disqualifier just
Yeah.
because they had been previous cycle. We wanted to kind of be able to view to some extent and have the flexibility to be able to decide that at that time.
And I do think all of these, I mean, even if they qualify, they still need to go through EDC and get a recommendation, and then through us and get approved. So,
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, just in general, as you're thinking about all of this, like someone applying does not mean they would necessarily get the funding they're asking for, or necessarily as much funding as they're asking for.
you're ready to move on to,
So I think we got consensus on the 3 quotes is not required for projects that don't require a match, essentially.
Okay. Before we move forward, can I suggest anything above 5,001? And anything that they request 5,000, it does
Yeah.
that make here?
above 5,000 means anything over 5,000
So
and a
because if they
penny.
request 5,000, you're not requiring it, but if it's
5,000.
I think you're just referring to the word that needs to be changed.
Right.
That right? Yes.
one,
Yeah. Okay. So moving more into policies, we were already kind of there on the required quotes. So I'll direct your attention to page 8 of the packet towards the bottom, that second to last bullet. So a lot of, even after they go through EDC and staff and you all, their, projects change, scope changes, costs are seemingly always rising. They might realize something as they're putting together their engineering plans that a certain, way they had the access of the site working doesn't work with the plans. This amendment would allow sort of an abbreviated process to come to, it would be directly to you all because they've sold the general idea of their project to staff, EDC, and URA at this point. But if they have a change in cost, in scope, or appearance, like what the actual outcome of the improvement is going to look like, this would allow them to write a letter of explanation, get on the next Urban Renewal Agency agenda. They would come and present still, but they wouldn't have to go through the whole pre-proposal meeting, EDC, putting together the application. This letter too, it's important to note, would also come with supporting documentation of the changes. So you wouldn't just read the letter, you would also see what they're proposing to change. And if it were a change in cost, it would have to be updated quotes as well. So is that abbreviated process something you all are interested in providing?
I think it would be fine.
Okay.
Just if it changes scope of work, where is that line to determine if this is a whole new project that might need to be looked at versus it's just, it's a little bit more money or it's a little bit different. Is there a decision on your guys' part to see, make that distinction like, yep, it's going to go straight to us?
Yeah.
Or
my initial thought, and this is hard to codify in policy, but if it deviates at all from the specific appeal or the reason you all provided it money or the reason that it was an interest to the city to see this project go through, if that kind of thing were to change, I think it would be important because the whole purpose of the project and the city investing in the project is different. That it's hard to codify, but that would be my initial thought.
I think it'd be fine doing this, and in worst case, it comes back to the agency, and then we decide this is a big change that changes our whole look of the project. So we would like to evaluate or go back to EDC or approve or not approve.
Right.
But
I think what we wouldn't want to say is like anything over a 10% change requires a whole new application, but they're at 15%. It's really not a big, So this allows a little flexibility, like you're saying. Could always make the decision to kick it back.
I can see money. I mean, it's a $10,000 project. The grant is $5,000. It comes back 6 months later or something change, something new. Supply, now it's a $12,000 project. They're asking for another $1,000. Maybe it's simple, but it's just still want half of the project.
I still think it makes sense though, because we want to keep the amount of work they have to do minimal, but it's still going to come in front of us.
Yes.
To approve. So it's,
Yeah.
It makes sense to me as proposed. It would be different if it wasn't coming, in front of us. We might want to put some different guardrails on it, but since we're going to see it,
I just like thinking of examples. If this is a portion of a project, then all of a sudden they want a whole much bigger project that is that as well, and something else. It kind of becomes a whole separate project that would have to kind of start over. But if it's just in addition to the project they're doing, then should be quick. I mean, they might be in the middle of the process. So they don't have 6 months to get through EDC, get through us, and it might have to be done quicker.
Okay. So moving from the policy side to the process side, this is on page 9 of the packet. So the only significant change to this section is adding a pre-proposal meeting. And this one is a big deal to staff because what happened in our last couple is that as these applications were moving through, all of the necessary departments weren't involved or aware, and different requirements that different departments had, like public works, engineering, planning, they made, naturally changes to the cost. And so they had already been awarded a grant amount by the agency, but then these different requirements from different departments were changing things after the fact. And so the quotes were not what was awarded. And so just to get ahead of that, and also typically what would happen is someone would hear about the Urban Renewal Grant Program and they would get excited and they'd find our application form and then they would just send me an email with the whole thing done, and we hadn't heard of it before. And so requiring this pre-proposal meeting gets them in our door, gets us aware of the project, everyone who will have any kind of say in the way the project goes will be invited to this meeting. And then it's really also not just for staff, but the benefit of the applicant too, because even though we're supporting their project with some cost assistance, they still look at this as from a cost benefit analysis perspective. And so they want to know what's required. Are you going to require engineering, traffic control, things like that? And so this would be a big deal both for the staff side and honestly the developer side to require this as a step in the process before they even touch the application form.
That makes sense. You just kind of answered my question of if they aren't sure of a permit or
Yeah.
how much are we going to require flaggers or this, or things that the city might require that they don't know,
Right.
Which would add to their cost. Makes sense.
So then they're moving to the application form on page 12. There are just a couple adjustments here. Nothing real major. We're kind of done with the big ones, but removing the where the applicant residence is. This just kind of opens up the city for any bias claim that we don't need to deal with since it's not necessarily super relevant to project. We added another one on page 13, which catches and just proves that the applicant has no violations with the Scappoose Municipal Code as they're coming through the public process of this. And then on the checklist, on the very last page, I believe it's 16. On the checklist, we've added pre-consultation meeting. We've changed design and plan, so they're not going to have to engineer it and spend thousands of dollars before they know if they're going to get support from the city or not, but just submitting more clear concept design so that you all know what improvements you're awarding. And then requiring 3 or more professional quotes with detailed line item budgets. Everything that would be seeking grant reimbursement needs to be in there. And of course, this would apply to projects over that 5,000 that don't require a match or do require a match.
The one thing that I'm sorry if I'm missing it, instead of business information, or maybe it can go under project information, can we ask the location of the project?
Yeah, absolutely. So that would be business location in the form.
I get it. This is on page 12, right? Base stamp.
Yeah, the front.
So what if they have a main, business location and that's not the location of
Right, Vancouver, Washington. Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah. Okay.
that's what I'm trying to establish with that.
I've got no issue doing project address there.
Okay.
And then,
Yeah, or they could, right, yeah. It could just be under project, wherever you want to put it.
Yeah. No, and yeah, no, and I think that's a good call because that did come up on one of the
It
applications.
could be project location if different than business. I mean,
Well, it has to be in the urban renewal district.
Exactly.
Yeah.
To be eligible anyway. So
Right, so we
you
need
have
to,
to verify.
yeah, I'm just trying to think of those examples. You're not going to own this building and probably do a project over there if you don't own, I mean, you got to own it. So it's
Mhm.
business name and address is most likely going to be the project address. But
one,
just-
Yeah.
one thing we did see too, which I thought was a little interesting, was the landlord, so to speak, the property owner was basically using their tenant's name as like the way to get the grant, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. So I thought that was before us, I was like, that's interesting because it was for his interest as the property owner because it was an improvement.
Mhm.
Yet I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this without
Yeah, I got you.
offending anybody. But we'll call it a cart that was on the location. He was using that name to basically apply for the grant. So it
Mhm.
was a little, I felt, my opinion was that it was a little misleading. I don't think it was intentional, but
Okay.
yeah.
From my understanding, if an owner of this building right across here, whoever's leasing it wants to do the program, they put in the program, but the owner of the site, the owner of the building cannot be in violation of any code as well. I mean, the owner of the building
Correct.
And so whoever's leasing the building or running the business may not know that. I mean, they may not know what the owner of the property. And it's a like a violation at that site? What if he owns 3 buildings and he has a violation at another site?
Well,
Does that
Yeah.
still preclude that site?
That language is in there because, you're right. Like if, a property owner isn't taking care of business, even if it's somewhere else, city wouldn't necessarily want to, enrich their pockets.
yeah, because it's right here, it says, does the applicant or the site have an active violation?
Yeah,
So
so-
either.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the applicant, is that whoever's renting the building or the owner?
Could
of
be
it?
Could be
either.
either.
Because if the owner,
I guess if you're a renter, you're not making a permanent improvement without the owner's.
Correct. And there's, it's mostly boilerplate language, but there is a property owner authorization form in here where you can't just do an improvement without the property owner signing off on it.
I think that's where you would catch it. If the owner of 6 buildings has 3 outstanding issues over here, that is going to preclude this renter from
Mhm.
taking advantage of the program.
And even if the tenant business owner doesn't know if they have a violation, we do.
And we're capturing that hopefully with the business name information.
Yeah.
Theory, right? Yeah.
Background check.
We track our violations by the site, by the address, the actual physical location that the violation is occurring, so.
Do we have that many open violations?
Typically are dealing with one at a time, maybe
Okay.
1 or 0.
I have a question that you have, the option to submit a USB drive.
Yeah.
You guys have, some type of mechanism, or I'm not sure what they're called, but make sure that it's safe,
Question.
cybersecurity reasons, make sure that, because sometimes those drives have with,
Yeah.
maybe if you don't have one, maybe it's another
Question.
Yeah. That's a good idea. That policy wouldn't live in here, but I'll definitely write it down and chat with Dave Maller about that. Thank you.
Yeah, I would say mostly people just email you the files. It
Correct.
was
Yeah. Which can have funny business too, but we have our ways of checking that.
Anything else? If not, now, you said you wanted to vote. Are you able, with those changes? Do you want to wait and put those in and vote on it another time, or can you vote with changes?
Rather than take up another meeting, I'd probably encourage you all to just do an amendment to a specific section if you're feeling comfortable with these changes.
This was a regular meeting that meets every other week. You could put it in the next consent agenda, but we don't know when we're going to meet next.
Right.
And you might have 2 or 3 applications between now and then.
And it takes up a whole work session spot too.
So if you want to give us some change of language that we'd like to write down and then vote on, I'd be willing to listen.
Yeah. So the one change would be on packet page 7, unless I'm forgetting something else that needs to be updated, but the change would be in packet page 7, and you could amend the sentence that's currently there to say grant requests and then add in excess of $5,000 must be submitted with 3 or more professional quotes.
Right.
Ben, Lori, does that language sound good?
Were you also going to add something? I think Tyler had mentioned it about just some language in case they weren't able to get 3 quotes, just to let them know.
an idea, but I'm going to write it down so I can read it.
If you think of for language later, because there's no way that I could do this on the fly and get it right and not come back later and say, I think of something a little bit better. I think we would be okay with that.
So I got here at the end of that quote requirement policy, reasonable effort to acquire quotes may be considered by the Urban Renewal Agency.
Leave some flexibility. Changes, okay. And we're still good on all goods, services rendered must be provided by a licensed contractor or retailer in order to be eligible.
That's a good catch too. We were gonna change that to,
When the grant award exceeds,
yeah.
it's 5,000 or greater.
Mhm.
I think you could just put that in front of sentence.
In grant awards in excess of 5,000, all goods and services rendered must be provided.
Because it's 5,000 or greater. More, whatever you want to say. I
Above 5,000. Same.
think we're gonna scalp anybody for a dollar.
Well, you know, have to be literal.
Okay, did we have another? On the submittal checklist, you can still leave on there 3 or more quotes. Like
Yeah.
it is,
And then just refer to the policies.
yeah. Pre-consult, the pre-consult, nothing was changed there other than
That'd be required no matter what.
pre-proposal.
You can always replay the recording of the URA too and meeting and make sure that you got it.
Yes, yeah.
And just adding to the application, the address of the location.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, then if we've made 3 changes, we've looked at everything else. So now I did mention Marissa was an excused absence tonight, but with who's here, are we willing to entertain a motion to approve?
I will make a motion and see if it passes.
Are you gonna read them all or just with changes?
I would just say with the changes that we discussed on the record.
Okay.
Did you already?
Recommended.
Oh,
You're on your own.
yeah, let me get to the.
Be looking for a suggested motion.
Mhm.
Yeah, I can wing it and you
Yeah.
can correct me if I'm go off base there. Mr. Mayor, I move council adopt the, or sorry, not Mr. Mayor.
Hmm.
Mr. Chair, I move that the agency adopt the amended Scappoose Urban Renewal Agency Grant Program Guidelines as discussed.
I have a motion by Agent Miller to accept the Scappoose Urban Renewal Agency grant program guidelines as discussed. Any second? Second by Agent Santiago. Any more discussion? Being none, all those in favor state by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Carries unanimous.
Can we
Appreciate
get a
it.
voice vote? Roll call?
Everyone here was voted aye.
Except for.
Chris is excused absent tonight.
Is here?
Okay, that's good. Appreciate it. All right, meeting
Thank you.
adjourned.